Hey everybody, it's the Zen Witch. I wanted to do a quick video just to show you what I've been up to during the apocalypse here. I live in Ohio. We are in lockdown as of 11:59 last night on March 23rd. And my state, I am eternally grateful to say, is ahead of the curve in handling this aggressively and proactively. Wait one second. Turning my fan down a notch. I have a broken fan on my computer, so I have to keep an outside fan on. Anyway, let me show you what I've been doing. Because I'm a sewer, I am making face masks. The call has gone out from all kinds of healthcare facilities. They are out of paper supplies. They're having a hard time getting more. So the call has gone out for people to make fabric face masks as they used to use before we had paper. And I know some people have been questioning this. Is fabric really safe? But it's safer than nothing is the main point here. So I found a pattern online from Deaconess Hospital, and I will link that below, on how to make a face mask. And I have modified that pattern so that there's a pocket in it that can have an N95 or a HEPA filter inserted into it to make it much safer. So I thought I'd step you through. So you start with a 6x9 rectangle, two rectangles of fabric. I am using outside pattern fabric and white muslin inside. And my dear friend Jeanette gave me some fabulous cotton fabrics that are batiks, and they're a nice heavy tight weave. And so with the heavier fabric on the outside and the muslin on the inside, I think it's great, especially if they're going to be inserting a filter in it. So let me show you the steps that I do. I was writing this pattern up, and oh, it gets so tedious because there's nothing so simple that it can't become incredibly complicated when you try to put it into words. So being a visual person, I thought visual is better. So we have our two pieces of fabric right sides together. Of course, muslin has no right and wrong side, but you want the pattern side in on the other fabric. And then you measure in 2.5 inches from each side. So this is the top, the bottom, and the side. So in 2.5 inches from the side, this is going to define the pocket. And then what you do is just stitch from, I don't know how well you can see stitchery. Let's find out. There's stitches. Okay, good. Good, we can make it work. So you want to back stitch and stitch all the way up to that 2.5 inch mark and back stitch there again. This is going to be the most vulnerable seam in the piece, and it needs to be very sturdy. So do that on both sides, and as you see, once you do that, it leaves a gap in the middle. All right, that's step one. Step two, we take those pieces of fabric and we press open. I thought I had one that just showed. Okay, so we take it to the ironing board and we press the seam open this way. Again, you're going to have that gap in the middle. That makes it easier to see. There's the gap in the middle. And then what I'm doing is stitching 2 rows of zigzag over the raw edge and then 1 row of straight stitch 1/8 of an inch in. And I had been thinking that I was using a 3/8 inch seam allowance, but when I was mocking these up, I realized I've been using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So again, on this side, 2 rows of zigzag, 1 row of straight stitch 1/8 of an inch in from the edge. That should make that seam handle some wear and tear on that raw edge. I mean, you could also take it and fold this seam allowance under and stitch over it, but with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, that's going to be way more fiddly than I want to get involved with right now. I will say too, looking at a lot of different patterns and trying to decide which one to go with, my I prioritized speed above everything else because the need is urgent and immediate. And also having the pocket. The modification for the pocket makes me very happy. The elastic on them, some people are going, that's going to wear out. True, but it's going to hold for now. And what we need is things right now until they catch up with paper supplies and using what they're used to. Okay, so we've reinforced that seam. Now, step 3 is we're going to we're going to install the elastic. So we're going to have right sides up, we're going to put the elastic, maybe if I do this on the white side, it'll be easier to see since I've got black elastic. You're going to butt that elastic right next to the seam and line the raw edge up here. Okay, so you see it's going right along the edge of the seam, the raw edge of the elastics with the raw edge of the fabric. Fold the other fabric right sides too, so you see right sides are together, and then stick a pin in it, clip it, whatever you do. Now you've got one piece of elastic going into the center here. You want to make sure that it stays flat all the way across so you don't end up with a twist that would be very uncomfortable behind an ear. And you're going to put this elastic 3/8 inches in so that when you do a 1/4 inch seam at the bottom, you're not catching that elastic in the seam. And yes, it's going to pull on the top, but that's the way it is. Work with it. Okay. So I've got that sandwiched in, and I'm going to take a pin and anchor that. Okay. So you've got elastic loop inside here where the right sides of the fabric are. And then you've got wrong sides out here. And what you're going to do once you put the other piece of elastic on this side is you're going to stitch a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around. Make sure that the elastic is well into the inside, the loop part, so you don't catch it in the seam. Sew down to a 1/4 inch. And then with your needle down, you're going to turn 90 degrees, stitch across the bottom, and stitch back up the top. Of course, knowing you will have elastic pinned in that side too. So once you're done with that and it's stitched all the way around, you're going to clip the corner, things like that. So outside of where those two seams meet, you're just going to clip that corner on the diagonal. Do not do that up here. This is not a seam allowance. This is actually part of the thing, and if you nip that off, you're going to lose your elastic. It's going to start pulling out, so you don't even need to clip that corner right there. And then we're going to turn it right sides out, and what's really cool is you can reach in and grab the elastic and just let that help you turn it inside out. Okay. And you don't even have to do the thing where you poke it into the corners because we've got elastic in the corners. And if you just pull the elastic, it's going to square those corners out really nice. Okay. Then what you do is take, hold on, and open it up this way because I like crisp seams. I really like crisp seams, and pressing is your friend. So open that bottom seam up like this. Take the iron, run it across there to flatten out that seam. Doesn't matter if everything else gets wrinkly. And then once you do that, flatten it this way and press those seams so they're just nice and sharp. And then you will have this. Then it's time to do the tucks. So you can do 2 tucks like this. As you can see with these, I was doing a box pleat. I may go back to doing that. I'm just still kind of experimenting with a couple things to see what makes a difference and what doesn't. I don't know that that makes a difference which way the tucks are. It might make a difference in sewing, whether you're going kind of over the hump or coming off of it. But any rate, this is what it would look like with 3 tucks. This is the top, this is the bottom. And on this one, I tucked them the other way. And then press. And what I'm doing is making the tucks so that I end up with 2 3/4 inches on this end. And then go back to your machine, sew down. Oops, I skipped something. Before you sew your tucks in, you want to go where that 2.5 inch mark was. Okay, so at the corner of the pocket. So if you open up, you're going to see that's where the pocket starts and ends. You're going to stitch here back and forth a couple of times and then a 1/4 inch seam allowance to the edge. Do the same thing on this side. Stitch back and forth a few times and then turn and 1/4 inch seam allowance to the end. That's going to reinforce this pocket because if they're pulling filters in and out, this seam is going to take a lot of stress. That's the most vulnerable one in the whole thing. So you want to make sure that's going to hold up. All right. Then we get the tucks, and it doesn't matter whether you tuck it from the inside or the outside, or what the hell you do. Just do your tucks, so you end up with 2 3/4 inches there, and then stitch them down. And I'm stitching it down 1/4 inch in, and then again 1/8 inch in, just so it's really sturdy. Hold it, you have to stitch across the bottom too. So when I'm stitching down the pleats, 1/4 inch down this side, pivot 1/4 inch across the bottom, and then, sorry, this is the bottom. So down the side, pivot 1/4 inch across the bottom, pivot 1/4 inch up here, and then do the same thing 1/8 inch from the edge all the way around those 3 sides, because you've already finished the top part. Okay, onward. And there you have a mask. These go over the ears. This elastic is a little less sturdy than the white elastic that I used in these. And if the loops are a little bit too big, the pieces of elastic are 7 inches. If the loops are a little bit too big, whoever's wearing it can take it and knot it and pull the knot way out, and that'll cinch it in a little bit. They could also, overlap and stitch it to make it smaller. I went back and forth between ties or elastic, and again I came down on the side of what can I get done the fastest, what can be in their hands the fastest. I've seen Joann's Fabrics is actually delivering fabric to people and patterns so they can cut, and then they will pick that up and they will deliver it to somebody else that's going to sew. They will pick up the finished masks and distribute them. Their pattern, from what I understand, has a seam binding on the outside. You could do a mask pattern that's just got this rectangle with seam binding here that comes out into ties. There's a lot of different patterns. I looked at like 5 of them before I went back and I actually prototyped one that turned out just to be too much of a hassle. So I ended up back at the first pattern, and as you can see, it works. It does what it's supposed to do. It covers down here, this part of the face. It lays flat against here, and it covers up over the nose. Particularly if you have a filter in there, it's going to be gonzo. And I think this might be convincing me to go with the 3 pleats instead of the box pleat, if you can understand what I'm saying. But then again, I do this, and it's the same thing. It's laying flat against my face, it's under my chin, and it's over my nose. I think more pleats just might make it fit a little bit closer. Not sure. Anyway, I will link that pattern below. I'm sure if you just search patterns like Joann's and Deaconess, lots of patterns will pop up. This is what I'm going to be doing for the time being right now. I was going to be, producing a lot of great videos and stuff, and the need here is the greatest. So let me know if you're sewing. Let me know what you think about this pattern. If you found a pattern that you just love way better than this. I'm looking at this one and going, I did 2 big pleats here, and this one has 3 smaller ones. You can see I could fiddle with this for fucking ever, but again, the point is to get them cranked out and delivered. So anyway, let me know what you're doing. Let me know that you're safe. Please follow the CDC. Please follow guidelines in your state, except if they're letting you go out and meet with other people. Then just stay the fuck home. I look up what Ohio's doing, because we've got it right. There's a graphic online for each state saying what is 0 hour for us. What is the last date you have to get your shit together before it's too late. Ohio right now is looking like we're ahead of the game by 3 months. I don't know what that means, but it's making me feel safer, and that counts for a lot. So anyway, I love you guys. Talk to you soon. This is the Zen Witch. Blessed be.